And so this program puts a lens on what it means to be fully in our power by knowing again who we are, who our mothers are, who our spiritual lineages are, as well as our physical lineages, much of which has been disrupted, has been fragmented, intentionally disrupted and fragmented through centuries of conquest of Black women's minds, bodies, and spirits. And why do we want to do this? It's because we want to reclaim our right to rest. My research shows that Black women are exhausted. And in that exhaustion, we become disconnected from our bodies. We become disconnected from our purpose. We become disconnected from our families, from our partners. And so these things have denied us a right to rest, something as simple as rest, restoration, joy. Many of us don't know what it's like to experience joy. If you ask the average Black woman what does joy mean to her, she'll just stare at you. I was one of them, so I'm not even saying this from a third person standpoint. For a long time, I couldn't tell you what joy meant because I didn't have the spaciousness in my life to even navigate any spaces of joy. And so these systems have denied us also our cosmic authority to our own divinity, to our own divinity. We have become subjugated to systems that tell us that God is outside of ourselves, that God is the embodiment of a man, that God that we're mere sinners, and that we are an abomination to God. Like all of the things, all of the teachings that tend to put Black women at the bottom of all hierarchies. This is intentional. And this has been done over generation after generation after generation. And so, in my own work, and there's a lot of work to be done. And so, in my little segment of the world, I focus on the soul wounding effects of historical trauma and how the repeated dehumanization and subjugation of Black women's bodies, the forced disconnection from our ancestors, the demonization of our indigenous spiritualities have created this deep, profounding rupture in our souls. And that rupture, unbeknownst to us, is silently transmitted to the next generation because the next generation lives and breathes in our bodies, in our wombs. And so that pain and that harm, regardless of how strong we are, regardless of how much we have overcome and how resilient we are passing it on from generation to generation to generation. And so in this program, I am going to lean into this embodied, spiritualized approach to healing because again, that harm and that trauma, whether you're conscious of it or not, it lives and breathes in the very cells of our bodies. And so through this program, we're going to be studying authors, spiritualists, and healers that hold. Is there a question? And if not, can you mute? I'm hearing. Um, and so we're going to be studying authors, spiritualists, healers that hold the truth that soul trauma, as experienced by Black women, requires soul-based spiritual practices to heal. And I'll get into what some of those practices are. But again, these are embodied practices rooted in our connection to spirit. And when I say our connection to spirit, that's our connection to the cosmos. That's our connection to the land. That's our connection to the water. That's our connection to the wind. That's our connection to each other. That's our connection to music. That is connection to every living, breathing aspect of this world and beyond. And how do we engage masterfully and mindfully at maintaining these connections so we can create lives that are in harmony, that are in balance, that doesn't constantly extract our power and our labor, even most of all our families. This extraction of our labor, that's a real thing. And so, as I said before, I am so very grateful that you are here answering your own call, because it is that you have been divinely led to this space to continue to do this work. You already see yourselves in this work as being generational pattern breakers, as being generational. And we talk about breaking generational curses. And I want to reframe that and think about creating generational healing, creating generational power, creating generational connections. And that's so very important, because on the other side of that healing is creation. And so, how do we be so radically in our power that we get to literally create the world that we want to see? We literally get to create the world for the next generation and the next generation. So, how can we? Because that's our birthright. That's what we're due. We're Black creative mommy. We're the creators. We're the origin of all of this. And so, how do we radically stand in that power and be that? And so, that is kind of some context and a little bit of background in terms of why I created this particular course.